Hello and thank you. My name is Brian Lavoie, Michael Lavoie's younger brother. Now, Michael is 6 years my senior. This means that my first memories come about when Mike was around 10 years old. Those years contain some of Michael's peak and most memorable moments. However, they also contain some of the lower points of our family's lives. I look back on my childhood as a controlled chaos. My days centered around keeping a tight schedule and a tenuous ceasefire between my parents and my brother. Back then, it wouldn't take much to set him off. A small change in plans would be enough to light his fuse, and once that happened, my parents went into full protect and control mode. Items would be thrown around the house. Michael would yell at the top of his lungs. We can all picture a child stomping their foot and crossing their arms and pout. Michael took this a step further, jumping as high as he could into the air, only to come crashing down with both feet stomping on the ground, shaking the foundations of the house. On one particular occasion, Michael broke off a corner of my bedroom door, a 3-foot hole just underneath the doorknob. Though, on the bright side, I do remember telling all of my friends how cool it was to literally be able to crawl into bed every night. While Michael's tantrums were aggressive, they were almost always directed at authority figures. Being 6 years younger than Mike and half his size growing up, I didn't impose that threat to him. Because of this, Mike and I were able to connect in ways my parents and he could not. I started off as his sidekick. I was with him all the time. Our days ran like clockwork, as required by Michael back then. Mom, Mike, and I started early, either at Cosley Zoo or Coral Cove Water Park. At that age, when I was around 5 or 6, I quickly learned his boundaries, which were strict in some ways, and actually extremely lax in others. For instance, when a safety break was called and the rest of the swimmers would leave, Mike could not be bothered to leave the pool. It would take the entire family's effort to carefully corner him off into the side closest to the sandbox, and only then could he be convinced to play in the sand for a few minutes. However, in other ways, Mike was quite accommodating. If I wanted to play with him, he would be gentle with me. In fact, many times he would act as my rag doll. We would spend hours dunking each other underwater and jumping off of each other's back in the pool. But that wasn't the only place where we found connection and repeated activity. Anyone who knows Mike also knows his love of movies. Here too, we mapped a special set of rules that we learned to coexist in. It became apparent quickly to me that Michael was going to watch whatever he wanted to watch, despite my protests. Just like in the pool, I learned to work around those parameters for my brother. While I didn't always enjoy the movies, I did enjoy reenacting movie scenes with Mike shot for shot. In those days, we focused on the physical scenes, and I never minded, because Mike would usually agree to let me be the aggressor. We would spend whole afternoons wrestling each other on the ground, replaying fight scenes from Michael Lavoie classics like Back to the Future and Happy Gilmore. As a matter of fact, I think Michael can help me with one right now. Biff! Where are you going, Biff?
I'm going to get my car, bring them on.
My exacerbated family will tell you that there are hundreds more where that came from. And as Mike grew older, I began to notice his tendencies to sacrifice his once long-held boundaries to better interact with others. Something I am still amazed to see every time we're together. I see Mike's flexibility manifest in new ways every time I see him, and numerous examples come to mind. For one, the same person who would start screaming if someone even came near his food now immediately thrusts food into my face whenever the plate hits our table. Here, Brian, I noticed you didn't have any fries. The same person who would lash out in rage whenever he heard me singing as a kid now joins my oldest brother, Jeff, and his friends at karaoke specials and packed sports bars, just so we can sit down and have a laugh with new people. Just last week, I took Mike to a bar on the north side of Chicago to watch the Cubs game. Before I knew it, he had struck up a conversation with the gentleman sitting next to us, and the conversation lasted maybe 20 minutes. At different times, I overheard them talk about everything from Cubs vs. Sox history to upcoming Chicago alderman races. Now, Mike doesn't know the first thing when it comes to alderman races, but he does know how to connect with others. He was nodding his head and smiling like he was the mayor, which in fact is his nickname at Giant Steps. Now, there is one situation where Mike's sacrifice for connection really stands out to me. And it came a couple years ago when I went to college in Central Illinois. It was tradition for Mike to visit me once every semester. Every trip would end in us going to a sports bar to watch whatever game was on that night. And Mike made it no secret that this was by far his favorite part of the trip. And I could tell. On past occasions, he would burst into the room, regaling patrons and employees alike with a telling of his solo Amtrak trip down to visit his little brother. But on this trip in particular, I wasn't feeling well enough to go to the bars. Not physically sick, but mentally exhausted. Throughout that day, Mike asked me eagerly when we were going to leave and which bar we were going to go to. At first, I didn't have the heart to tell him that I wasn't up for it that night. But in the early evening, his curiosity piqued and I broke it to him. Mike, I'm not really doing too well. I feel a bit sad and depressed. This is something I had barely admitted to myself at the time. After that, we sat in a comfortable silence until Mike looked up, held out his hand for mine to hold, and said, "Let's just order a pizza tonight." Mike has never mentioned anything about that night since, and I can't be sure whether or not he knew how much that gesture really meant to me. But, like I said, Mike doesn't have to be an expert in a topic in order to be able to connect with others. And now I'd like to introduce to you all my best friend, Michael Lavoie.
Thank you very much. Thank you. When I first started Giant Steps in 2000, my favorite class was IBP and OT. My favorite part was computers, and Julie was my boss. And when I left Giant Steps in 2004, when Giant Steps didn't have any room for me, when I went to the Bridge High School, and then and when I graduated Giant Steps in 2010, and then I worked at in Fountain View, in Carroll Stream, Red Lobster in Bloomingdale, and I started working at Giant Steps in Lyle, in Lyle. And then I do cutting, vacuuming, and then laminating. And then when I'm also not working for Fridays. Fridays I do Westra, like Friday night social clubs. And Mondays when I'm not working, I do I do bowling. And then when I'm not doing and I do fun activities like going out, like swimming, dinner, and the movies with Samantha, and do sporting events with her like Bulls, Blackhawks, White Sox games. Go Bulls, go Hawks, go White Sox. And guys, have a nice evening. Thank you again. Thank you very much.